Once he defected, a Russian scientist told an investigator a very interesting, if not terrifying, story of a giant, super intelligent, shape-shifting cephalopod that claimed the lives of his colleagues during its discovery and its eventual capture. This week, the Jackalopes will explore Organism 46B.
This week's episode of Jackalopes Explore is brought to you by Cloud Peak Center Lanes and Games, located at 1520 Coffeen Avenue in Sheridan. Stop in today to check out their amazing new arcade and prize counter, offering games and prizes for all ages and skill levels. From their full-service lounge to bowling alley and arcade, there is something for everyone. Cloud Peak Center Lanes and Games. Stop in today.
I'm Floyd Whiting.
I'm Aaron Linden and Steve.
And I guess I'm just one person, Emmy Whiting.
Shapeshifter. We're your jackalopes. Vostok Station, established by the Soviet Union in 1957, was discovered to have been sited atop a very large body of liquid water that was actually beneath some ice, and they figured this out in 1974. They subsequently named that Lake Vostok after the station. After 30 years of ice core drilling, the research team finally breached through the lake to the lake on the 5th of February in 2012. So this is fairly recent.
You think that was like 30 continuous years?
Yeah. The Soviet Union was actually very well known for their drilling. They actually have drilled the deepest hole known to the deepest man-made hole known to mankind.
That's wild.
They had a lot of great geologists over there. Soviet Union had some great scientists. I'm sure Russia still does. But so once all of this was done, they actually had an encounter. Now, it's questionable as to when this encounter took place, okay? A lot having to do with this story is questionable. We'll go over that in a little bit. But it must have occurred, they figure, sometime between February 5th, 2012, and the 30th of November, 2016. I know that's quite broad, but in November is when it all kind of broke. You know, the story started to come out. So Dr. Anton Padalka claims to have been part of the first scientific expedition that went down this borehole into this lake. He, quote, "We encountered Organism 46B on our first day. It disabled our radio, which we later learned, to our alarm, was intentional. It is also able to paralyze prey from a distance of up to 150 feet by releasing venom into the water. Tragically, my colleague and lifelong friend was killed this way." Organism 46B, according to Good Doctor, and I do believe he was a geologist. They went down there as geologists, not biologists. But Organism 46B is an enormous 33-foot-long, 14-tentacled squid-like creature which lived in Lake Vostok.
Hold on 1 second. So how big again?
33 feet long.
And how big is like the giant squid? Does anyone know? Should I Google it?
Much larger. Giant squids are super,
like huge.
Super huge.
Okay.
Yeah. You can Google it, but I think like
Hold on, I'm gonna
one of the
just go
largest found may have been around like 80 feet. But that's counting those two really long tentacles that they have to grab prey.
It's like measuring a building and including the little spire at the top.
Right, exactly. All right, so
up to 43 feet.
43 feet. Okay, so this is just a little shorter than that.
And some could reach 66 feet.
66.
Okay. Thank you.
This 14-tentacled squid-like creature lived 2 miles under the ice. That's how far that they had drilled. And this is one of the things about his story that kind of made me question. you're drilling 2 miles through ice. Just the ice alone is a major scientific discovery, because think about the amount of time that it took that ice to freeze. You essentially have a timeline of organisms in that water up to that point. The animal could release a toxin into the water to immobilize its prey from a distance of up to 150 feet. It displayed an astonishing degree of shapeshifting. Its limbs were animate and aggressive even after amputation, and it showed a considerable degree of hostility and intelligence. Now, while diving the lake, the group was attacked. The creature released its venom into the water, which the doctor said seemed to kind of take hold of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And
take hold as in what, though?
Well,
what is that? What would that mean? Okay.
It immobilized them, and then it would just literally swim up, grab you with a couple of its tentacles, rip you apart, and eat the little pieces.
Oh, yum.
Yeah. So there was
human
some,
jerky
Nuggets.
There was some tough stuff. You know, it didn't just eat you in one go. It ripped you to pieces. As Padlaka stated, quote, "He tread water wearing a blissful smile as the organism approached him. We watched helplessly as it used its arms to tear off his head, then popped its remains in its mouth. It was as if it had hypnotized him telepathically."
You're right, human nuggets.
Yeah.
Still later, the organism, 46B, stalked the group, and it actually, according to the doctor, took the shape, because, you know, you're underwater, it's dark, you can't really see too much, and so they had like huge lamps, and they weren't sure if they were getting separated. They, you know, a couple of their friends are already killed by this thing, so everyone's kind of in the bit of a panic state. And then out of the murk comes one of the divers, and they realized it was not one of the divers, but this thing shaped itself like a diver to get closer to them. And so it mimicked what they looked like.
So this was after the man was torn apart?
After the man was torn apart.
I'd be out of there so fast. What?
It's like, hello, fellow humans.
I'm here to science. Let's science. I find rock. Ooh, look, and it's someone's head. I find rock. Tasty
just,
rock.
You know, takes a bite of it like an apple.
This guy ate a lot of sugar. You want a bite? All right. So he said, quote, "It shaped itself into the form of a human diver. We thought it was one of my colleagues swimming toward us in its scuba gear. By the time the closest scientist had realized what it was, it had grabbed him and torn him to bits." So whatever this thing is, it's not just, you know, killing people to eat it, because he's already eaten a few. So it's just having fun now.
Yeah.
You know, and if this is my...
it's already eaten a few.
It's just having a good time, just tearing people
You think
apart.
about it, hanging out there for how long with nothing to do?
Yeah.
Right?
And all of a sudden, things to play with.
These new little toys come in,
smorgasbord.
and man, they come right apart. Man, up there in that warmer temperature, cook some real nice and tender. All right, so escaping the creature, one of the members actually managed to lop off one of these tentacles. Supposedly they had like a little type of ice axe or something, and lopped off one tentacle and kind of kept it. Later they found like this ice shelf that they could get up on, and they were up there and laid the tentacle apparently on the ground or the ice where they were.
This is one of my favorite parts.
And
It's just the tentacles, isn't it?
Padalka said later
you know
that
me, I
night,
love the tentacle.
later that night, it slid across the ice bank and strangled her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is impressive.
That's a hell of a thing. All right. Now, after finally trapping the creature in a tank, And I like how the story, like it goes from, man, this thing's tearing us apart. This thing, it's stalking us in the murky water.
After it tore someone apart, and we're totally still down to do this.
And we're down there just exploring with a massive tank
Yeah, how big is the tank?
in tow. Big enough to contain a 33-foot creature.
Mhm.
After finally trapping the creature in a tank, the surviving members of the team brought it to the surface, where they claimed that Russian officials seized this beast and told the international press that nothing of significance was found.
You know, have they even done research on cephalopods? They can get out of jars. They get
That's
out of a
true.
tank.
Yeah,
quite
that's-
easily.
Yeah, they are good escape
I
artists.
actually looked at owning a little octopus when I had my big fish tank, and I thought, man, I could give him a big home. He'd be fun to hang out with. And the guy who was going to sell him to me, he owned a place, I think it was in Canada. And he's like, have you ever owned one of these before? And I said, no. And he's like, you don't just buy an octopus. He said, these things will move a glass lid that is weighted, a tempered glass lid with cinder blocks placed on top of it. They'll slide that off to one side. And he said, as long as they can get their little beak through a hole,
It's like cat and whiskers.
they can fit their entire body through there.
Yeah.
He said he's got octopus, that octopi, I guess you'd say, that escape all the time. He said they're all over the place. They come in the next day and they're crawling around. He's like, these things get away. They literally
Could you
make it their
imagine?
job to get away.
That'd be like the best morning ever.
So don't buy an octopus, folks. Number one, I think, recently science has kind of discovered that these things are super intelligent.
Yeah.
And trying to buy one and then sticking it in like a
A
tank.
cage.
That seems very, yeah.
I'm not big on
I mean, honestly, anything though. Like for a tiny little fish, that tank is huge, obviously. But
You would
like
never know
a
that-
fish
yeah.
bowl,
Yeah.
fish bowls are not it anymore.
Unless it's a beta. Because a beta, one little fishbowl is literally a lot of room for them. But that's because of the way that they evolved and then eventually were taken by certain individuals and developed. You find a beta in the wild, they don't have this long flowy fins. They're actually quite a small fish.
Little.
They're very, very little, and they're found in the rice paddies of Siam after they flood it and then get rid of it. And they're called a labyrinth gill. Betas actually breathe air. They go up to the surface, they take a breath, and they come down, and they pass it through this very complex gill system. It's quite fascinating because the paddies where they were found, there's no oxygen in the water. They have to get the oxygen from the air above.
You know, that makes so much sense how my mom used to have betas then. She would put a plant with all the roots
Yeah.
in the water and then the beta would just swim in the roots.
Yep,
And-
quite common.
yeah.
I
Anyway, my whole thing is do some research before you buy an animal.
Absolutely.
Any animal.
Absolutely. Give it its best life. If you're going to insist on owning it, give it its best life. Now,
Same with this.
same with this thing.
This giant squid octopi thing.
So, supposedly, Putin Putin has laughed at this story openly, by the way, because this
Then it must be
scientist,
true.
Right. Yes. What is he hiding? He has to be hiding something.
because Dr. Padlalka fled Russia after allegedly discovering that Russian President Vladimir Putin had plans to weaponize Organism 46B. And so, of course, the Russian government's like, what the hell are you talking about? They're like, what? Now, a couple things that we need to consider. Number one, when you drill a borehole, the majority of the time, these things are like, 14 inches?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Especially if it's going to go miles into the ground, under ice, to an area we have no idea what the hell's down there. And it's not the fear of animals that keeps people out of there. They're like, what if the temperature suddenly changes on you? What if there's noxious gas under there? You're not going to send people down this massive borehole. Even if the borehole was big enough for a person, it's 2 miles.
Well, and also think about shifting ice. Even if you are creating a hole,
Ice moves.
ice moves.
That is why they have such difficulty drilling for oil in the Arctica and Antarctica is because ice moves. You can't put a platform out there with all this shifting, horrible ice. It's going to bump into things, destroy everything. So you got to keep that in mind. And these are scientists. They're not just going to be like, hey, let's throw in some wetsuits and head on down for a multi-day excursion.
Yeah.
Into what?
Yeah.
Oxygen, when you go on a dive, people, it's kind of like bullets in the movies. People watch these films and they think, well, that oxygen is just going to last forever. It goes quick. It goes really quick. The firefighters who
especially if someone's getting ripped apart right in front of you,
your adrenaline's going to skyrocket.
Be hyperventilating just a little bit.
Firefighters are trained how to control their breathing when the adrenaline hits, because you consume a lot of oxygen, and that oxygen is their life when they're trying to save somebody else. It's probably someone else's life. So those bottles go quick. And if you see a firefighters out there battling a big fire and they've got to get so close that toxins may be present, you will see firefighters come on and off the line and get their bottles switched out by their fellow firefighters all the time, because those bottles are gone. And any diver will tell you,
oh, absolutely,
they go quick down
and
there
you need
as well.
Access to come back up. Like, again, they're not going to just send you down.
And think about the pressures.
Yeah, I was just going to say the decompression and stuff. 2 miles, there's a lot of pressure.
Absolutely. Even if this is like an under ice lake, I would imagine that water is still under a massive amount of pressure.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, this is why we need Aaron here, because we're all just like
poo-pooing the whole story.
Okay,
Aaron's the
girl.
one who would fight for it.
We're still on the rails here.
yeah, exactly.
We're this far in and we haven't even come off once.
But I mean, and then, the story suddenly includes this tank that they seem to have on hand.
and somehow able to capture this thing that's ripping everyone apart.
And get it up through the borehole or put the tank down in there?
Yeah, how does that work?
exactly. First off, it's a remote station.
Yeah.
This is a very remote station. And everybody knows, like our scientific exploration, our people that we've got in Antarctica and the Arctic, when they take something with them, they're like, this is what you got for probably 6 months, if not to a year. So you better have everything with you. They're not going to have, and they're geologists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're not going to have just this, we got a random tank up here that we can send down
That's
to
big
capture
enough
this thing.
for this.
Well, just for perspective, we're talking 2 miles down, right? The Titanic is 2.4 miles down.
Well,
And you think
and
about what happens with submersibles and things in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, this story doesn't really hold water. One last point that I do want to make is that Dr. Padlaka has proven pretty impossible to relocate after he came forward with this story.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to come up with something like this, look, I'm one of those guys. I want Bigfoot to be real. I want Nessie to be real. I want Organism 46B to be real.
Why would you want him?
Because it
at least Bigfoot doesn't bug you.
that we know
that
of.
we know of,
That we
yeah.
know. There's a lot of people gone missing in the
I
forest
guess,
in the Northwest.
but I'm just saying. At least he's not leaving witnesses of him tearing
Yeah, it's
people
very
apart.
true.
That's
He's
true.
thorough.
He takes it off to the little cave and does it there.
Exactly.
No one else can
leaves
see it.
no bloody trail.
Yeah.
Nothing. Doesn't even leave scat. Picks up his mess when he leaves.
Yeah,
So it's just
considerate.
I like the idea, of cryptids like this, jackalope, all of it, because it's the idea that there's still so much more to discover. And we are discovering new organisms in the world all of the time. We talked about the Hasselhoff crab when we were talking about this. They discovered this species of white crab.
It looks more like a lobster, but they call. I think
It's
they do call
it's
it
a crab, and at some of the deepest points in the ocean, where there are these massive heated vents that blow out water that is so hot that we can't approach it, and so we send our little rovers in there, and they discovered they went down there to study the bacteria that grow around these vents and to try and figure out is this basically the creation of life, where mineral mixed with water so hot, did the first cells really start to develop in these areas? Because this bacteria can live through anything. And as they're drifting through the water, they come across this massive pile of these white crabs with all of this, excuse me, what appears to be fur on their chest.
They're the best.
And so, because if I remember correctly, it was a group of students along with the scientists who discovered these things. And they're like, what the heck is this? And because this thing's got all this fur on its chest, the kids decided to call it, because you discovered it, you get to name it. So they named it the Hasselhoff crab.
That's excellent.
And what happens is these crabs can stand this intense temperature, and they crawl up on top of each other onto these massive vents, because these vents produce water that is so hot, it incubates bacteria in the fur, and the crabs eat the bacteria out of the fur, the little bacterial mats out of their fur, and that's how they survive. And what an amazing discovery.
Yeah.
Life, to quote Goldblum, life will find a way. You know what I mean?
Where's your leather pants? Bring in the leather pants.
It's fascinating to me where we find life in certain areas where we're like, there's no way anything can survive here. And then all of a sudden there's a flower, or there's like a bacteria, or there's a germ,
Yeah.
and we're like, holy cow,
Well-
life has figured this out.
And I would like to talk about the creature itself, because parts of that is completely believable to me.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I mean-
we've talked about it before, how you get that far down, you might as well be in deep space.
Yeah.
because
Yeah, exactly.
There's so much unknown in
Like
that area.
the size, the look of the animal, like I could see that.
And
also,
giant squids are real.
yes,
Yep.
because even people thought for the longest time those are a myth, you know?
Well, yeah,
but-
you get these people that are, you're not expecting to hit anything, and all of a sudden this moment happens. And
Yeah.
You're looking at it through these excited eyes, and you tell the story, and it's like, I saw this massive monster. Turns out to be a squid or something like that.
Yep.
Well,
and I could even believe the paralyzing agent
Absolutely. Yeah,
that
I
it
can see
gives
that.
off, because animals do that kind of stuff all the time.
I mean, you get down there to where there's no light, and you start to figure out, that these animals have a bioluminescence.
Yeah.
And many, excuse me, I got frog in my throat today. Many of these will use, like the anglerfish, right?
Yeah.
He's got that little bulb, and he just
So
flashes
cute.
this little bulb.
They're so
then
ugly, but so cute.
It's got this
can't even
massive
describe
mouth.
it.
It's almost like a cage.
Yes.
That as soon as you come thinking that that's food, he's got you, and it's all over. You can't even escape if he opens his mouth a little bit, because you got those teeth that are like
Absolutely.
bars. But scientists are starting to wonder, is bioluminescence also a language?
Maybe, yeah.
There are questions about how intelligent octopi really are, or even cephalopods really are. There's a great video out there where
Stop. Are you going to talk about my favorite video?
so scientists made
love
this.
it.
They can't get close enough to an octopus to really study it, in his natural environment. The octopus takes notice of you instantly, and they usually hide, or they don't want anything to do with you, and you don't see them behave naturally. And so what they did is they made this little robot camera look like a little octopus. And this little octopus shuffles out there, and a real life little octopus kind of comes out and sees him, but then realizes that there's fish swimming around, and his buddy's not doing anything about it. So he essentially builds a little house for his octopus friend. And even at the end of all of it, it certainly appears like he reaches out and gives him a hug
It's the cutest
before
thing
he leaves.
you've
And
ever seen in your life. And I just highly suggest looking it up. What would you say? Like,
I don't know. Octopus camera hug.
Yeah.
Maybe Google that, because
give it a goog.
That's a good band name.
you know, right?
Oh,
But the thing of it is, you're watching this, and even the scientists are like, "Look, man, are they hugging? Like, is he saying goodbye to his buddy? You know,
You're good now.
yeah, see ya. I got you." But watch the video, because it's so fascinating, and these animals are so smart that some people are even considering taking them off menus, where it's like they're too smart to eat, they're too smart to hunt. Just leave them alone. And the way that they can camouflage themselves, the way that they can, figure out very complex puzzles. Very complex puzzles.
Like, I mean, even the jar. That's an amazing feat.
Fantastic video.
My dog could not find his way out of a laundry basket if I was facing it up.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah. If you can't chew your way out, there's no way out.
no.
Yeah. Whereas, like, these things, they'll figure out, hey, this is a nice little house. They'll take the lid off, crawl inside, and then put the lid back on, and then they're like, "Yeah, I'm happy and I'm safe."
Yeah.
It's just fascinating.
And also just seeing how they squish in there is so cool.
Well, I think one of the most fascinating things about an octopus, they have a cell in their skin that can expand and change color. Very complex cell, and it's got a specific name, but I'm not going to mispronounce it. And what this does is, if I'm an octopi and I figured out, okay, where I'm at. There's no hiding. They can turn white and give themselves like spots to basically give this false
I'm toxic
message, or they can flash where the whole skin looks like it's mother of pearl. And if you haven't figured out where I'm at, their shape can change where they can lay on a rock.
Yeah.
And look like that rock.
Just blend right in.
And then 2 seconds later, crawl down and look like it's sand. Like they just shift. And
Which, again, there's videos of that, too.
Oh, yeah, all over the place.
Very cool.
So fascinating. And so these animals are very complex. And so I can see, there's one octopus that will actually fake looking like a water snake.
Yep.
Because water snakes are highly toxic and very aggressive. And so it just fakes it and just cruises along and nobody bothers him. It mimics that. And so I can see, a giant octopus mimicking a diver,
Yes.
Where it's just like, oh, just look like one of you guys.
Like, the part that lost me in the whole story is the part I said was my favorite part, where the leg comes alive to strangle someone in the night.
That seems a little far-fetched.
I'm like, that's a bit much.
Yeah.
To be fair, scientists are starting to discover that each arm of an octopus has neural pathways. What does that mean? That means that it is quite possible that each arm of an octopus can act independently of the main body, meaning each arm could have its own personality.
Right.
This one's aggressive. This one's not aggressive.
It ain't going to strangle anyone.
Well, that's even if that's the case, it still couldn't survive on its own.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. It's got to get its nutrients from somewhere, and that's a very complex system.
Yeah.
What's the animal that can just like take off its arm and then just like grow another one?
There's a couple lizards that can actually do that with their tails.
Yeah.
It's actually quite common.
But I
in the
remember
reptilian
watching
world.
some sort of video where it was like,
I think it was Transformers. They
but they were
did it
fighting.
turn into a car after?
Listen, no, it didn't.
Okay.
Mimicry's deadly.
But it was like in a fight with something, and then it just takes off its arm and fucking ditches
Bails out.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably it. Could be
Crabs? Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
there you
Grant's
go.
got
I
it
could
right. I
see
think
that.
it was a crab because it was just like, see ya.
You can have that. Well, and
I'll
what
grow another one. It's fine.
that's a great defensive mechanism. Just like
Absolutely.
with lizards, you're busy chewing on that. I'm beating feet the other way.
Yep.
So there is a
Why
lot.
can't we do that?
Yeah, we're just
Why haven't
mammals.
we evolved?
we're not as smart as we think we are.
No, we're not. No, and what defines intelligence? If we think about communication, we think about auditory. a language is spoken. We've got written languages, and you can say that that's a visual. But what if light patterns flashing in a certain way are much more complex than what we're giving them credit for? If you visit Devil's Tower here in Wyoming, they have an entire field of ground squirrels. And if you go there and listen to the rangers talk about these ground squirrels, which they have studied for years, they have discovered that these ground squirrels has a very complicated language system. Every single human being that has ever visited these ground squirrels are given a name.
They're calling
by the ground squirrels. Right? Yeah. There's an asshole if I've ever seen one right there. Hey guys, here comes asshole. But through recording and listening back to these conversations that these ground squirrels are having with each other, they figured out each of us has a name to these ground squirrels, and they know, okay, we like this individual, we don't like that individual, and they'll communicate that to the entire tribe.
Yeah,
their little community. And so what I'm saying, the point that I'm trying to make here is we have so much more to learn, because we thought years ago, oh, well, it's ground squirrel. We know everything about a ground squirrel.
Right.
How dismissive are we of ground squirrels, right?
Yeah.
What if those squeaks and pitches and tones are much more complicated than what we give them credit for? What if cephalopods can communicate with each other on a level that we don't even understand? But I've kind of gone on a bit of a rant praising cephalopods. I love them. They're brilliant. I love octopi.
I know, we were talking last night, and Floyd was having none of my jokes. He was like, I'm taking this octopus too serious. You cannot joke about this.
They're a fascinating creature. And there's one, I believe he's called the Nautilus. Have you ever seen one of those? They look like a squid inside of a snail shell. And these things have not evolved for perhaps billions of years.
Should we have Grant
They're the
put a picture
same.
in?
Yeah, if you can find one, please do, because they look prehistoric.
Yeah,
and they're alive today. They just haven't changed. But
we've talked about that. We were like, they just kind of got it right from the start.
They got it right from the start. And they haven't bothered changing anything. So, but there's all kinds of rumors about like DNA from these things can't be found in any other genus. That's intriguing because where did that come from?
Yeah,
it has to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
If we can trace our DNA all the way back to the first time that these chains of 4 chemicals, that's all it is, 4 chemicals that decided to form up and do the right thing and then evolve to a point where it's trying to understand itself.
Yeah.
That's what humans are. We're nothing more than 4 chemicals trying to understand the world around us. We've just evolved far enough along.
I think that was the mistake in evolution, is where we became self-aware. If we would have gone down a different path and not worried about that, we'd be better off.
A cat sunbathing in a house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, all this why business, we shouldn't have even taken that turn.
Yeah.
You know what, though? That may be a discussion for Jackalopes Explore, because it's that self-awareness that really changed the game. Why and how did DNA decide, I want to investigate what's really going on? That's all we are.
Yeah, what am I doing here?
What am I doing here? What is the meaning of all of this?
Yeah, like that was the wrong turn.
She hates it when I ask questions like this. Because she starts wondering herself, and slowly I see her dive deeper and deeper into the hole.
The spiral begins.
Why are we here?
Continues.
Why am I paying rent? Why? Why am I forced into a system where all I do is work?
The good thing is you pay rent.
So one thing I do like about this story is that it's recent.
Yeah.
And all these other like ancient things.
Yes.
This one's a modern era monster story.
It's almost like when you hear about ghosts and you're like, why are there never like present day ghosts? Why are they always Victorian children?
It's a great point, though. You know, I want to see a ghost running around with his hat on backwards. You know, where he's like he's
doing a TikTok dance, or clock app dance,
doing that little shark dance thing that they had going on for a while.
Yeah, there have been ghosts formed in the last 30 years, right?
You would think. You know, could you some ghost every night at midnight? She sings Wilson Phillips through the whole house.
It's not even one of the good ones.
I just can't even take it.
It's on the second album.
Stop singing the B-side. Stop. Yeah, it makes you wonder, though, you know, or like a Kiss fan wandering the halls of some stadium from years prior.
I would love just to hear like Careless Whisper floating through the air.
Just too heartbroken to move on. Just waiting for that last dance. Oh my God. But I mean, it's all a good point, though. You know, ghosts are always from a certain time period. Monsters are always ancient. So yeah, I think a modern story is actually probably needed. Mm-hmm. The hardest part, though, man, we can sit here and just punch holes through this thing over and over and over and over.
But again, I'm on board with like something like that existing.
Yeah.
Well, it's totally possible because there's so much down there we don't know. So.
You think about giant squids, right? For the longest time, they only showed up when they died. And I think one of the first hand-drawn giant squids that we actually have had to be pulled up onto the shore by not just a team of Clydesdales, but a massive team of Clydesdales. And as they're pulling it up onto shore, they're just tearing it apart. We have found specimens recently, but you know, you find them and they're already breaking down by the time, because they're such a soft material. So scientists can't get a hold of them fast enough to study them or to, you know, really look at what's going on there. Why are they growing so big? How do they survive? How do they breed? What's going on? So most of the time we flash freeze them. And of course, when you freeze material, it instantly starts to destroy the material. So
which is why freezing bodies is not actually achievable. You turn into goo when you melt.
Yep. Walt Disney was gone long ago. I hate to break everybody's heart. I think the head in jar is more plausible than anything else.
Yeah, because at least that kind of maintains some integrity that way.
Absolutely.
You can hook me up neurally. Like that's more of a possibility. You are not going to, all those people who are frozen themselves to be brought back in the future.
You're going to come back as Jell-O.
I believe there was actually an experiment that was done on like someone's child who like, and who knows if it was a child or like an adult child, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, I think there was something where they didn't consent to their kid being frozen and then they were. And that was when like this whole thing went on. And then, then I learned about the goo that you turn into.
Well, the thing of it is, if you've ever watched ice freeze on a windshield, what does it do? Ice takes a very sharp shape. So in your cell wall, if every cell has a wall and it has to be there to contain everything within the cell, because cells are actually extremely complicated. If you freeze the liquid material within that cell, it creates ice spikes.
Well, and water expands when it freezes too. So
it just blows it out, right?
So like the blood in you would just like
destroy the rest of you. But that wouldn't matter because the rest of your cells are getting ripped apart by this. I mean, it's actually quite complicated. But at the same time, once you see it, you're like, okay, I don't know why people thought this would work. But, okay, you do what you want. It's a belief. Go for it. It's your money. Whereas finally, and this was pretty dang recent. I'm not going to say a year because I can't remember. And I don't want to say the wrong one. We got a giant squid on film for the first time. And it was a Japanese biologist. And he'd been, if I remember correctly, it was like his life's goal to see one alive. And they were out there basically trolling. And I don't know how long they did it for. But this thing comes out of the murk. And it's in frame for just seconds.
Yeah, very brief.
And it's almost as if the squid realizes this is a setup, man. Because the squid comes out of the dark, goes
This ain't
towards
no
that bait.
octopus
Yeah.
robot camera.
And then suddenly kind of, to me, and I'm sure the scientists are like, no, it didn't. But to me, it seems like the squid's like, whoa, no, man. And then just boom, bails, just gone. These things are so massive. We can find scars of their attacks on whales. How big are your balls if you're going to take on...
Well, they are 44 feet to 66 feet.
I mean, like
so-
literally, they're probably kind of large.
But think about it. And these are the ones that we found.
Yeah.
How
right.
large is your beak, more like?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
How well, if you're going to look at that and be like, I could eat that. I could eat that. You know? And
It's like pelicans where they like size you up.
they
with
always
their
tried
mouth.
it, yeah.
They're
Yeah,
like,
they do
"Can
too.
I?"
They're terrible. Everyone's like, this is such a friendly bird. No, man, he's sizing you up to
Yeah.
see if he could swallow you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about ancient maps and all the giant cephalopods that are wrapping around the ship or something like that. You know, the Kraken,
Yeah.
you know, an ancient story from Greece. The mysteries of the sea and the things that we have managed to see there are amazing. We've explored more of our local space than we have of our ocean. And it's a damn shame because the ocean is a fascinating place, but it is a very dangerous environment
Yeah.
for us who are very squishy.
Yes.
We're too squishy.
Exactly the word I was going to use.
Look, man, I keep telling people we're not going to settle other planets either.
No.
We are too squishy. And you walk outside, take one breath, come back in, and they're like, wow, those boils formed fast. You know, like there's bacteria.
What's that one movie? The alien movie. Which one is it?
Prometheus?
Yeah. That one is the one with the nasty
the black goo.
spores. The spores.
Yep.
And they're like, let me just take off my helmet. I'm like, never take off your helmet.
Why would you ever? And they're supposed to be like some of the smartest people
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
world. Yeah.
That's like the biggest issue I have with that movie. I love that movie, but
It's just-
I always roast every single one of them. I'm like, why are you taking off your damn
A
helmet?
scientist would never.
I would never.
No, you've got this little sphere of life around you. If you lose that,
Yeah.
it's all over. So
Yes.
yeah, that's the
Yeah.
one thing you hang on to.
My nephew is a deep sea welder, and he talks. He tells his dad, you know, you get down there, you can't see anything, and the gear that he has to wear to do his job is not only expensive. That kid's putting on a suit of armor,
Right.
Yeah.
to go down and weld these things. And
Well, yeah, and that's one thing that about this story, the venom in the water. They're wearing suits of some sort if they're that far down.
That is
So
true.
How did the venom
I
get
didn't
to
even think
anybody?
of that.
you're
I
in
know
a
that's
sealed
silly, but I
environment.
Yeah, you should be protected from whatever that's releasing.
Yeah.
Like, did you take your thing out of your mouth?
Maybe they took the helmet off.
You know, it's
Let me
insane.
see if
yeah.
I could breathe underwater.
What does it taste like? Not so good.
I'm a scientist, damn it.
Oh. That's science back in the day. Just taste it.
Yeah.
Or like police work. Yeah, that's cocaine.
How else are you gonna know?
How else you ever gonna know? Take it,
taste
rub it in
it.
your gums. I'm a cop. I'm allowed to do this. That's so unrealistic. Like every cop's looking at those movies and they're like, okay, what if it's strychnine? Now what, hero?
Well, we learned something.
Yeah. Well, it's not cocaine because he is dead. It's insane. Yeah.
They're just packing it like cocaine. They're like, this'll get them.
Well,
They always taste it.
they always taste it.
Yeah, this will take out a few of them at least.
Yeah. Unrealistic. But, you know, Miami Vice said that's how you got to do it. So that's obviously how you do it. A lot of holes in this story, but again, there are fascinating things under the sea that I think we can learn a lot about. So you don't need a monster to be made up to find something that is intriguing and dangerous and fascinating under the water. That nature has done that for us. We don't have to create anything. If there's a 14 tentacle octopus cruising around somewhere under the sea, it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, the thing that's great about it is if there is that, then there's more than just that one.
Yeah.
There are more of them
be.
down there.
What I think an octopus weighs lays like upwards of like 20,000 eggs. So think about that. Consider that. If a monster like this did exist. Have you ever seen, I can't remember if it's called the Dracula octopus or the vampire octopus, but these things are almost like a very burnt orange color. And as opposed to their tentacles just being out there, they have a web, like a membrane between each tentacle. And they wrap these things around, and it looks like a big pumpkin.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is that they're sifting through water to see what's in there to eat, because the beak is right there underneath.
Yeah.
And these things just look like this massive pumpkin in the water.
Google an octopus squid beak, because it's kind of nasty.
Oh, they're terrifying. They're terrifying. They got like that cross thing going on.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'm not just gonna get you. I'm gonna cut it like a pipe cutter.
Yep.
Ugh. Yeah, terrifying little creatures.
And just, again, gross. Little gooey. Little gooey.
You got anything else to add to our cephalopod monster?
I had a list of octopus facts, but I think we did pretty good. Yeah.
Nice.
I think octopus are fascinating on their own.
They are. They're
great.
Fascinating little creatures. We gave you a bunch of videos to go watch after this, so please go deep dive.
Yeah, if you want to be a hero, explore the ocean and not space, because it's like space with stuff living in it.
Yeah, we know there's life down there.
Go
right?
taste the toxin.
Yeah.
You always got to taste the toxin.
Always. What's he shooting out there? Take a drink.
Looks like grape Kool-Aid.
That's
Maybe
science.
It is.
Make sure that if you haven't, subscribe. Give us
That's how
a
we got
like.
squid ink pasta.
Yeah.
You never know. You never know. I want to thank Grant, who's always the man behind the scenes, making sure everything works really well and doing the hard work. We're the ones who just get to come on and kind of have fun. So
We're the talent.
We're the talent. Someone grab the talent and have them taste the ink.
Yeah.
All right, you've been watching Jackalopes Explore.